Hi, everybody. I'm Fawn Santos. Welcome to Day 2, Session 3, Indigenous Veterans, Service, Transition, and Disparate Access to Care and Benefits. Absolute pleasure to be here today to share information about this important topic. I myself am an Army veteran. I served 8 years active duty and then 2 years prior to that in the Army National Guard. I was a human resource manager in the Army. And currently I work at Amazon for AWS. I manage our global training and field enablement team. And I'm also president of Amazon's Indigenous Employee Resource Group. So it's a cause really close to my heart to support Native American and veterans from underserved populations. So today we have a lot of special guests with us, and I do want to have them introduce themselves, but a little bit about the topic today that we are going to be covering. Indigenous communities, namely American Indian and Alaskan Natives, serve in the armed forces at 5 times the national average. And despite their inordinate dedication to the country, these communities do often face disparate outcomes both during and after service, and access to veterans benefits and programs historically have been inequitably structured. And a lot of that is due to a lack of nuanced understanding of the unique needs and barriers that these communities face. Despite this treatment, veteran members of these communities do continue to serve as national leaders and elders and stewards and preservationists. So today we do want to use this opportunity to share our unique experiences as Indigenous veterans and also talk about the challenges and barriers that can come with accessing some of these benefits or services. So I do want to pop over to our panelists and have them introduce themselves. I'll start with Chief William Smith.
Issue.
Hi, Chief Bill.
Hi. La issue. Duke Day, Chief Bill, to haunt you. Hello, my name is Chief Bill. I am of the Eyak people of Alaska, and I am also an Army veteran that spent from November of 1969 to 77 in the United States Army. I was a heavy duty mechanic and recovery specialist. And I am also the chairman of the National Indian Health Board. And I just got appointed to the Veterans Committee, the VA Committee on American Indians and Alaska Native Tribal Health. I live in Valdez, Alaska, and I'm really happy to be here with you guys. So awata for having me here. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Bill. It's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for joining us today. Next, Elizabeth, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Perez, and thank you for that introduction. I'm from Norfolk Rancheria, Mono Indians. We're in the exact center of California, located near Yosemite, Sierra Nevadas. And I'm tribally enrolled there. And from my mom's side, on my dad's side, I'm Salt River Pima Indian. And I served in the Navy about 8 years active duty, and then about a little over a year in the reserve. So over almost actually 10 years total between my short time as reserves and most of my time active duty. But I come from a long line of generations that served in uniform. And I'm one of the first Native Americans, California Native Americans, to serve as Deputy Secretary at the California Department of Veterans Affairs. I was appointed by Governor Brown originally in 2017 to serve on the California Veterans Board. And then from there, appointed as Deputy Secretary of the Minority and Underrepresented Veterans Division. I served there about almost 2 years, and that transitioned into Governor Newsom's role, and that was about on October 2019. Before then, I started a company, and that company is GCG, and it's a general contracting and consulting firm that focuses on clean energy solutions. And a lot of the reason why I'm invited here today is because of my long history of advocacy as serving underserved veterans population and just underserved populations in general, women in construction, and also minority women in business. So I have a lot to say, and hopefully we can spark up some good conversations with also good resources. Thank you.
Liz, you're the ultimate ally. I'm so excited to have you here and hear from you. Thank you. And next, Heliana.
Ang alagum ayaga asak dakok unangak akok atyan ingiram tanadagusi ilagaw ng yakdakok unangam tunuran atchika akok kagidach mosasterks atchika kang akok dana inam tanangin kukan anirarizak. Hi everybody, my name is Honah, alagum ayaga Stepatin. I'm Unangach. I was born and raised in my village, Atchin Ingira or Akutan in Unangam Tanangin, also known as the Aleutian Islands of Alaska. I am learning Nirorem Tunu, the Nirorech dialect of Unangam Tunu from my language teacher and primary linguist of Unangam Tunu, Moses Kogidach Dirks. We teach Unangam Tunu at the University of Alaska Anchorage, where I serve as an instructor of Alaska Native Studies. I'm also a PhD candidate in Native American Studies at the University of California, Davis on Patween lands with a designated emphasis in studies in performance and practice. I live in Dena'ina lands in what is known as Anchorage, Alaska. And I did serve 4 years in the Navy as a fire controlman, second class petty officer on board the USS Chosen, CG-65, and I served on Kanaka Maoli homelands and waters in what is known as Pearl Harbor, Hawaii.
Amazing. Thank you, Heliana. I'm so excited to hear about your experience as well. Now, as each of you are leaders in your communities serving in advocacy, education, policy, amongst other things, I would like to hear more about how you found yourself leading after your time in service. Heliana, can we start with you?
Oh, okay. Sure. So yeah, I guess that when I was in the Navy, I had a really, I don't know, I didn't have a good experience in the military. And so I felt like I had to like remove who I was as an Unangach person, as an islander, as someone who had grown up on the water. And I was put in this situation where I was like, it just wasn't like a good time for me. I missed my community. I missed my Unangach people. I felt like I had to remove who I was as an Unangach person and replace it with a uniform, right? But we aren't all uniform. Our experiences that led to us serving aren't all the same, and our experiences in the military aren't all the same. And to assume that they are is to erase who each of us was and our experiences. And I think it's a really homogenizing tactic to assume that we all will don a new identity as a service member, but it didn't sit right with me. So that really motivated me and mobilized me once I got out to go completely back into my culture and to immerse myself into who I am as an Unangach person, as an Unangach matriarch, as an Unangach woman. And it really, I was just mobilized to be able to wear who I was again, and not like walk in two worlds. I don't believe in that. Like, I'm going to be Unangach everywhere that I go. And I think the Navy didn't like that. I was like, nah. And so it took me a long time. And I think this is a question that comes up later, a long time to be able to even like own being a veteran, because I didn't want to identify with that community. It just wasn't who I was, because I am Unangach before I was in the Navy and before I was a Navy veteran. And so it just inspired me to like get back to my community. When I got out 8 years ago, I started dancing again and teaching Unangach dance. And I started learning from my language teacher, Moses Dirks, again. And I just did everything that I felt like I didn't have the opportunity to do. And I guess it put me in these leadership positions. And, you know, as an Unangach person, humility is one of our values. And so it's like odd calling myself a leader in those kinds of things. I'm just doing the work that my elders and my family expect me to do. So I'm just fulfilling my roles as an Unangach woman with the knowledge of dance and language and arts, and sharing those, and doing everything I can to not gatekeep that knowledge that has been, gatekept from my communities, or not allowed through US American assimilationist boarding school policies. Like my dad's generation wasn't allowed to own those things the way that my generation is now. So I would say that I'm like an accidental leader. I'm just fulfilling my unangach roles as a community member with access to these knowledges.
Beautiful. I can relate to so much of what you said there, especially the walking in two worlds, walking that dual path. I think that as an Indigenous person, I think you have to be Indigenous to really understand that connection to your homeland. And it's not just a place you're from or religion, it's who we are. And having to hide that or conceal it for so long is very difficult. But I think things like this are really important, sharing these experiences, because there's always somebody that can relate to that and that is going through that and walking in those shoes today. So in that way, you are all leaders. Thank you for that. Liz, I'd like to hear more from you about your journey to leading after your time in service, especially considering the vast amount of things that you're involved in. You've really stepped into that leadership role. How has that journey been?
Well, when I first transitioned out, and I think what I'm hearing everyone kind of say is like living those dual worlds, because that's very true. I mean, that started from when I could recognize, really understanding, okay, I'm Native, I'm different. And then kind of keeping that to myself from grade school to even high school. And then that same feeling through my Navy career. Sorry, my bird is just having a good time back there. If you hear my bird singing, he's happy.
He's talking too.
But no, he's talking too. He has a lot to say. But with that, just having those dual worlds, and it does do something to your soul, right? It kind of does do something, because it's like you can't really show your true self or talk about your true self, be your true self, because honestly, I didn't want anybody to make fun of me, and I didn't want to have to like step in and like explain myself. I thought that was just so weird, and I just figured it was just better just not to say anything. But it wasn't until I transferred out of the military and I was a single mom. A lot of things happened, life happened, and I found myself homeless and living in a Motel 6, pregnant with my son at the time. I was 5 months pregnant, and my daughter was 6 years old. And I'm thinking, how the hell did I end up here? I went from Sailor of the Year back to back, early promotes, and I'm like, what the heck happened? And I just felt like I'm gonna be exactly what I didn't want to be. And I wanted to break that cycle out of, with everything with my family and all that generational trauma and just all that generational struggle. And I'm like, this is what my life is going to be. And I stopped feeling sorry for myself. I had to snap out of that moment. And the first people I reached out to, I had to be honest, and I had to tell my family. I was ashamed. I told my mom, I told my grandmother. My grandmother, she went and kicked in gear, my Mono grandmother, and said, you need to contact our tribe. They need to help you. And I thought, I don't want anybody to know. But I'm telling you, when I did contact my tribe, they did help me immediately. There was programs to get me into housing. They connected me back into my native world, back into Indian Health Clinic. I went into Rincon Indian Health. I got some services there, got, the medical care I needed as a pregnant woman. And also that's where I found out I was a veteran. I didn't even know I was a veteran. That's crazy, but I didn't identify as a veteran back then. You're talking 2008. And at that time, veteran women, there wasn't a whole lot of statistics about veterans, and particularly veteran women then, as there are now. But I fell in those cracks of that, the entire statistic of Native women. And I was going down not such a good path, but luckily I had my family, my community support of the Indian Health Clinic and the services they had there, the American Indian Chamber, and to helping me, guide me to follow my dream and showing me that path of starting my native business. But it wasn't easy. It totally wasn't easy, because there are predators that will take advantage. And when they see a native woman, a veteran, and all those things, I was called a unicorn. And people wanted to take advantage of the unicorn. And I still don't like being called a unicorn today. And all those things that are there to help grow our businesses, help grow us as individuals and as leaders. There are people that are there that want to take advantage. And that's what we need to be careful of. And so when I heard the last speaker mentioned accidental leader, I think that's kind of similar to what happened to me as a accidental leader, because I was taking advantage of people in business or large corporations saying that they're doing business with me as a disabled veteran business owner, and not including us on the actual work on these state contracts or federal contracts. And when I finally started to speak up what was happening to me, I was warned not to. A lot of other veterans came out and said, hey, that happened to me too. That are men, white men, veterans are saying that happened to me too. That company did the same thing to me. So I think it's important that we do speak up as veterans as a whole and say, you know, all of these practices that are there to help these programs, that are there to help veterans empower themselves to grow as businesses and also employ other veterans, are also, there's other predators lingering around to take advantage. And I think it's important that veterans have that space, especially if you're minority, or especially even 4 times, 5 times greater chance if you're Native, that this is going to happen to you. Because guess what? If this is happening to our veteran community, you better believe it's happening to other minority businesses that are non-veteran. So we're pretty much that weather vane that's saying, hey, this is happening. This is red flag, red flag. But long story short is that all those practices that were out there, I was, pointing to and being an advocate of. I ended up overseeing the California Disabled Veteran Business Enterprise Program for 2 years and did some work to shed some light on that, and I'd love to continue working on that. And of course, I was an appointee. My time, every time is, it's a term. So, but there's just so much more work that needs to be done. But in terms of being a leader and how I found my way, it was really because all those things that I advocate against now and advocate for now are all the same things that happened to me in my life. And I feel that, the Creator gave me this opportunity to live this good life. And now I'm here to give back and either donate, serve, or mentor others so that they don't have such a hard time, in the beginning as I did.
Wow, Liz, thank you so much for sharing your journey. It's so powerful. And, I think this a lot, that I think having options and opportunities, it is a privilege. And it's something that a lot of us here didn't have when we left the service. And so there are people out there that are taking advantage of it. And it can be something like even just tokenism, just the impression of support without really including you. And I think that's important to keep advocating for that. So thank you for being here. Chief Bill, can you share about your experiences and what your journey looked like moving into this leadership position after your service?
Yes, Honah, yes, I can. I am a Vietnam vet, and when we come home, America had disrespect for us. They spit on us. They thought we were lower than dung. And when I left the service in '77, the nearest dumpster I found, I took off my uniform and threw it in the trash because that's what America thought of us. And then left forward 35 more years after that, my brother was also a Vietnam vet, and both of us have never spoke about Vietnam to anybody. With that being said, one New Year's Eve in Anchorage, Alaska, the city allowed a bunch of fireworks to go off. My brother was sitting on his back porch and he was enjoying all the fireworks. And the next thing you knew, he was laying on the deck and the Vietnamese were coming through his backyard. And when he told me that, I told him, I says, you know, I'm still 19 and I'm still in Vietnam myself. And coming back to a country that disrespected us as veterans, as American fighting men, was a real hard thing to take. So like I said, 35 years later, my brother and I started talking. And then I was busy creating life for myself and my family. And then I joined what was called, I'm a member of the Valdez Native Tribe. And as that, I was appointed to the Alaska Native Health Board. And I went to these issues, listening for the health and everything else of American Indians and Alaska Natives. And nowhere when we had meetings with the VA, did anybody say anything was not right. You would hear the VA come to Alaska, they would stop in Anchorage, they would stop in Nome, they would stop in Dillingham and saying all is good. Nobody said anything. And I finally had to stand up and say, you know, that's really bullshit. Because if you went to Dillingham, fly into the hubs is a good thing. Now get yourself down to the harbor and jump in a skiff and go up 50 miles to Portage. Get out at Portage and jump on a four-wheeler and go out there and ask that veteran, why isn't he not part of the VA? Why isn't he there? Because he's still out there disrespected and didn't want nothing to do with the VA. Well, as I spent more time with the Alaska Native Health Board, the VA become a different sort of collaborating group with us. And through that work, a veteran, any veteran today, can be served at over 200 and some different clinics in Alaska and get services closer to home. And that is a good thing because not everybody travels into Anchorage. And this is the same all over the lower 48 and in Alaska. When you go to rural areas, they're not being served. The veterans are not being served as they should be. Well, as the story goes on, I still work for the Alaska Native Health Board as one of their members, but today I'm also the chairman of the National Indian Health Board. So whenever we talk to the VA and the Indian Health Service, I tell them they need to start tearing their towers down and start working together before American Indians and Alaska Native veterans, because it is a promise that was given to us the day we signed our name. And I was 17 when I signed mine and found myself in Vietnam, that I would support this country up to giving my life. And they said they would take care of us. Well, I didn't know anything about post-traumatic stress disorder. But, you know, after 4 divorces, an alcohol clinic class, I'm still a 19-year-old kid in Vietnam. I can't change that, but I can learn how to live with my past. I can't erase it, it never will, and America will never be the same. But I can learn to live with what happened when I was a young veteran. And that brings me to the other step is, today I'm an advocate for American Indians and Alaska Natives and all veterans that needs the service. There are still so many of the brothers and sisters that come back from Afghanistan, Iraq, and, you know, we talk about 22 a day taking their lives, but there are more than that that walked away from the VA. And this is something that's owed them. They paid the price. They earned the right to be taken care of like the government said they would. And Indian Health Service, because it is a sovereign nation, and it's the trust responsibility through the Indian Health Service. But it's also the VA's responsibility to help us learn to live with the past. I'm starting another journey. Like I said, I've been appointed to the advisory committee for the Tribal and Indian Affairs. First time, there's always been a committee with talking directly to the VA, Secretary of the VA, to get our issues put before him and whoever is in the White House. So those are steps I'm taking to help my brothers and sisters of all races, all deals, because the bottom line is they are my brothers, they are my sisters, and we're a big family, and we got to take care of each other. So that's where I am today, and I get asked to come to talk on this one. I get talked to a lot of things, but the thing that gets me is when I get a call about 2 o'clock in the morning, and somebody, and I'll use my friend that's in Oklahoma, he called me up and said he needed help. He was going in for surgery because they were thinking about taking his leg and they were thinking about taking his arm, but he needed to get his house ready. And he said he couldn't get any help. Well, we got him help. So if my voice can ease the suffering of one veteran, I'm here to help you. Awa'ata, thank you for listening, and God bless America.
Thank you, Chief Bill. It's so inspiring to hear how you've turned your experiences into action. All of us here are really appreciative of that, and there's so much to learn from you. So shifting back to Haley Honah, some of your work is focused on addressing the systematic issues that Alaska Native peoples have in their educational experience. From your perspective, do you believe that the GI Bill is a universally accessible tool for educational attainment for veterans? Are there unique disparities that do need to be addressed to ensure equitable access for Alaska Native veterans?
Yeah, that's a tricky question. I really loved my when I did have the GI Bill, it was extremely helpful for me through my undergraduate career. However, I think where it fell short for me was, well, when I was transitioning out on a hardship discharge because I went home to take care of my dad. So I didn't receive any information on what veterans benefits or anything that there are. My ship was just like, okay, they really asked me a million times if I was going to go through with it. And I was like, yeah, man, you guys didn't even care when my dad was homeless on the streets and I needed to get home. Nobody let me go. They didn't approve my leave. So I was like, yeah, I want to get out of here. It's clear to me that I was just a body. And I mean, I had experienced so much racism and sexism on board my ship too. Anyway, I was like, yeah, I would rather be home with my dad and, taking care of him and spending time with the people that I love than be disrespected here. So I took it, but then I had 10 days to get out and, I didn't get any training. I didn't get TAPS. I wasn't there was no follow through, no follow up whatsoever. On what sort of access to care I had. And I just, they were just here's some flyers, And so I was fortunate that at UAA, where I did my undergrad, that there were really great people and Alaska Native people there helping me. And I went through Native Student Services, and they were the ones to get me in touch with the veterans folks, because I was I don't know what to do, but I'm starting school next month, And so I think for me, it was different. I just didn't have the support. And I didn't want it. I was like, you know what, it's fine. I have all of my Native organizations are here for me, and we're really supportive. My Native, I'm an enrolled member in my tribe and in my corporation and in my village corporation, and they provided me scholarships, and even our housing authority provided me with a housing scholarship. But I think the issue that I didn't know, when I went to UW, and this is where I met Lindsay, I went there for my master's degree, and I was so stoked. I got my bachelor's in 3 years, and I I applied to this master's program there, and I was hoping to use because I still had a lot of time on my GI Bill. I had like 2 years left because I mean, you get 36 months, but that's spread out across your semesters or your quarters. And so I had enough on my GI Bill to help me pay for my master's degree, but they wouldn't. I wasn't a resident of Washington. And there were all of these things that I learned like at the last minute as I was like moving to Washington without a place to live. I was like expecting the GI Bill to be how it was when I was here in Anchorage. But what I didn't know was that if you're not a resident of the state, they're not going to provide that out-of-state tuition. They'll only pay for the in-state portion. And so I had to get student loans. It was like such a confusing thing. And then because I had started my program like more than 3 years after I got out, like 3 years and 8 months or something like that, they wouldn't give me the in-state tuition. I was like, literally, I got my bachelor's so quickly and still I'm like, felt like I was being punished for not following these rules that nobody had told me. So I don't know, it was, I would say that there are ups and there are downs. I'm super grateful for the GI Bill. It's still really unfortunate to me that the VA never like helped me with that out-of-state portion or like, you know, and I was talking to people for months on end, trying to figure out how to pay for my master's. And I think it's just an issue with like, I wish that the GI Bill would understand that like maybe what we need to be successful in our career is a PhD. Like not for everybody, but maybe some of us do. That's for me, that's what it is. And it's like, I've rested on my own abilities to write grants to be able to get these things funded instead of using the GI Bill. So I don't know, education is, you know, one of my areas that I'm really passionate about. I'm passionate about epistemic justice because of the injustices that my family, Alaska Natives, and Indigenous peoples all over the Americas have experienced with our educational system, with the boarding schools, with English only, and all these genocidal assimilation tactics. So for me, having inequitable access to education is something that I feel like everyone should be working on. Like that's part of reparations, you know? And yeah, so that's all I have.
I can relate to that so much. I know, you know, no one in my family had gone to college. And so part of the barrier for me, and maybe it's just part of that unique disparity, is that I didn't know how it worked. There were all these rules, there were all these policies. I didn't know how far in advance you had to apply for college or what financial aid looked like. I didn't even really know what school loans meant and when you had to pay them off. Is that something that you feel like contributed to that, just in terms of, you know, like it's like you're not even starting at square one, you're starting at square zero sometimes without even having basic knowledge sometimes, or people to, you know, really guide you in that way?
Yeah, totally. I didn't have, so my dad, he dropped out of school to go crab fishing, you know, and he experienced
Mine did that too.
Yeah, so he experienced the boarding schools, and school for him was not a good place.
Right.
So he was extremely protective of me. And, you know, even now as like a professor, I'm like, I don't have these people to ask about like a benefits plan and retirement because my dad lives in a shack on the beach, you know, like in the village. And that's great. I love our life, but it makes it really like I'm alone in this, like especially navigating veteran stuff, because I don't have people here like that I would identify with or I would seek help from. I had Lindsay in Seattle, and Lindsay was amazing. And I still, you know, ask her about a lot of things. Like she helped me, encouraged me to apply to the Pat Tillman Foundation scholarship, and I got it. So I'm really grateful for that. And finding people along the way who are not like the experience that I had in the military. So I'm grateful for the people that I find later.
Yeah, that community is so important. Elizabeth, you've also done a lot in our community for Native American veterans, and as a former Deputy Secretary of the California Department of Veterans Affairs and Tribal Liaison, you have been instrumental in building supportive programs and services for Native veterans across California. Can you share some of the greatest disparities and inequities that you've seen that you've been working to eliminate?
Yes, I apologize in advance. There's a lot, we have a lot of dogs and birds.
No worries.
So hopefully you can hear me. I want to just lay it down on the real, and be completely honest, because I believe that I don't believe in coincidence. I do believe that I was given these opportunities because there are not very many Natives that serve in that capacity that I serve. And I know that because I was there, and I was one, actually there was 2 Native Americans serving as a governor appointee out of 1,000 in the state of California at that time. And one of them was the governor's tribal advisor, which she's still serving, Christina Snyder. And during that time, I didn't really understand like how everything was all connected and how it works. So that what was talked about earlier in regards to state tuition and how GI Bill didn't cover that, it is up to the state to ensure that the veterans are protected, that there aren't these state tuition fees, and there aren't all of this red tape, because California did it at this time too. And later on, they had a restraining order against the VA to stop. Actually, it was a cease and assist for all of these schools, not these universities, to stop blocking them from serving the veterans to finish their degrees. So a lot of these veterans are from out of state, hence why they're in the military. They are not all from California, and they do not all go to California schools. Or also vice versa, they're going to California schools, but they're not a resident. So they should be able to finish their education. But this happened about 3 years ago or so. Hopefully they got it resolved. But I know that they were dealing with some issues with the VA and with the universities. And I just do hope they were able to resolve that. But it is up to the state leadership, whether that's Washington, Oregon, California. I hear most, unfortunately, the Western states tend to do this. And I'm hopeful that other states can get on board to make it easier, less barriers for veterans to attend the universities. And I see the reason why, and a lot of the states, they want to, of course, make money. It's all political. And when it comes to veterans, it shouldn't be political, but people laugh and are like, are you kidding me? It's a veteran issue. It's money. And they want the veterans to drop out of the school and attend their university within their state or XYZ. And that shouldn't be. So that's number one. I will say that immediately. The other thing I will say is the Tribal Veteran Service Officer school, the Tribal Veteran Service Office. The TVSOs is a big issue nationally, is a big issue in California. Before, there wasn't a deputy secretary that was Native that understood the importance of a TVSO. I understood it. And I worked with Stephanie Birdwell from the VA, who's still serving today. I was working with the Western Regional Director, Terry Bentley, who is still in that position today. And they were all open arms in helping California Department of Veterans Affairs establish it. And I worked on that for 2 years. And I went through training with Oregon State, their equivalents of CalVet and their leadership. And they also had a Native deputy there, making sure that the state had a state ran TVSO, not federally ran, but state ran. And the Oregon State actually has a power of attorney that they issued out to tribes and some organizations to ensure that they supported these state TVSOs. And what do TVSOs do? It provides access to care, access to VA healthcare, access to benefits and services to otherwise Native veterans may not know, like I didn't know. They're in rural communities, or we're just so out of touch in some ways because we're so detached from that life. I would say once we leave the military, we want to just leave it behind us and get back to our communities. However, we need those benefits for ourselves and for our children, for our families, and as we age. And to be connected to our benefits and services is going to better our lives and ultimately better our communities economically, honestly, you know, because we're in touch with our benefits and services. But I will say this, there are a lot of barriers with when I was serving, and it's unfortunate that our state today still does not have that established. And there's no reason why it shouldn't be. And ultimately, where it ended up is that our state did not want to provide a power of attorney to the tribes here in the state of California or the organizations, and basically wanted the tribes to become more so congressionally recognized, which could take up to 10 to 15 years. And that's quite shameful coming from California, such a liberal state, and that leadership is still there today. So there are still a lot of red tape and barriers that exist, and just honestly, maybe not the right leadership in place to get things moving ahead. And here we are entering 2022, and we're still doing this to our Native veterans in one of the most highly populated Native veteran states in the US.
Wonderful. Thank you, Liz. Thank you for your work. And we just have a few minutes left here today. So Chief Bill, I just want to close with you just sharing very briefly about your experiences. Last year, you testified before the House Veterans Affairs Committee on VA telehealth during the COVID-19 pandemic, and really talked about some of the disparities in American Indian and Alaska Native veterans' access to healthcare. Can you share a little bit of your opinion about what can help to raise overall health outcomes in this community?
Yes, thank you. You know, a lot of us talk about veterans and the VA, and there was a question earlier too, and I'm just going to throw this in there about the VA will not tell you what you need to do. And we all know that. The VA will not tell a veteran what has to do. But, you know, a tribal veteran representative can. And usually as a veteran themselves, talking to another veteran, just listening to them. And, you know, it took me a long time to figure out that I needed hearing aids and that Agent Orange was killing me and what all was involved. But from the help of another veteran brother, I was informed that I need to put in for this and need to put in for that. But the VA didn't ever say nothing. I go to their meetings and they say, oh, everything is fine. But a tribal veterans representative can tell you just by listening to you, you know, that ringing in your ear, it's called tinnitus. That's part of your disability. That you can't sleep at night, there's a reason for that. And as a veteran, you can tell the person and then bring them to the service officer. We need to change it a little bit farther so where the TVRs can actually interface with the VA like a service officer and help a brother and sister put their paperwork in to get everything done that needs to be done. And when you talk about bringing in extra money to any of the villages, it's not a gimme program. They already paid for it. They already earned it. When you can't hear because of the shells that went off, if you can't sleep at night because of the dreams and the nightmares, yes. So I just put a big punt in there for the tribal veterans representative. And every year they come out and these are sometimes nephews and grandchildren of trying to get the old Vietnam vets back to the table. This is a new VA. This is a new veterans. Go back and get your what you earned, what you what is owed you. But on the COVID-19, yes, we got to all work together to get that under control. Let's tell you what, I'm tired of running around with masks. I'm tired of Zoom. I'm tired of everything that we can't be together to work this thing out. And you're right. It needs to be brought to the reservations. It needs to be brought to the villages that we need to stop this virus. You know, up in Alaska, they had a 1,000-mile race one time because there was an epidemic in Nome. And they got the serum to them, and people, you know, can get it today, but they never had to travel by dog sled over 1,000 miles to get the medicine to where it needed to be. But up in Alaska, they still do that. They still land their little planes and they get the snow machines to get the deals and bring the serum to the villages. And we need to do that to all over the reservations and everything in the lower 48. We need to stop this vicious cycle. And it's going to take all of us. So I hope that answers your question. The big thing is as veterans, we need to take care of our brothers and sisters and make sure we welcome them home and help them out any way that we can to have their lives a better place to be. You can't change the past, but we can live with the past. The wrongs that was done us, just like the boarding schools, you know, when we talk about language, I was learning my language today from a Frenchman because of the boarding schools where you were punished for speaking your languages. The Yak language was dead till a 12-year-old kid in France heard my mother's last words. And now he's teaching us how to speak our own language. So with that, I will say awa'ata, which means thank you in the Yak language. And with his help, I'm able to introduce myself to a lot of these meetings by speaking our language. And then there's the other part of it is our culture. Because if we let our culture heal us from the inside, we can be better and we can sleep at night.
What a wonderful way to end today's event, Chief Bill. Thank you so much. And thank you to Honah and Liz as well. I appreciate all of you sharing today. And thank you everybody for attending this MBA Summit. Have a great day.
Thanks.